The first sound you notice is the music, violins playing with just enough insistence to carry people into waltz after waltz. The chandeliers shimmer above you, dripping gold across the crowd, and you feel as though the whole city has gathered in one grand room. You catch sight of Pierre, awkward in his stance, shoulders hunched as though he isn't quite sure how to belong among so much refinement. He wears a smile that doesn't entirely fit his face, but when he laughs, it's full, deep, and genuine. You sense in him the restless weight of someone who longs for something beyond these glittering walls. Nearby, Andrei stands differently, back straight, eyes alert but cool, as though already tired of the chatter around him. He listens politely, but his gaze drifts often to the windows, as if searching for a horizon he can't quite see. He wants greatness, you realize, something bold enough to quiet his doubts. And yet, for all his steel, there's tenderness hidden, waiting for the right moment to surface. And then Natasha, you notice her before you mean to. She's not the most regal in the room, not dressed in the richest gown, but her energy draws you in like a candle flame. She moves lightly, her laughter rising at the smallest things, and you catch yourself smiling when she smiles, even though she doesn't notice you. Her joy feels like music itself, unpredictable, bright, untamed. In that ballroom, these three lives brush against one another like sparks passing through the air. The conversation around you is endless. Who is marrying whom? Who gained favor at court? Whose fortune is rising or falling? Yet, under it all, you sense something more urgent. Hearts beating too quickly, a shared restlessness as though every soul here wants more than polite words and polished shoes. You drift closer to Pierre. He speaks with passion about ideas, grand reforms, liberty, even philosophy he has barely sorted in his mind. People smile at him kindly, indulgently, because he is wealthy, because he is naive, because he doesn't yet understand how heavy the world can be. But you feel his sincerity, like a young fire that refuses to go out. You wonder if he knows how lonely he looks when no one is watching him. Then you notice Andrei moving across the room. He's courteous, every bow precise, but he doesn't linger alone with anyone. You sense his impatience, like someone listening to music that no longer stirs them. Even when he stands beside his wife, he seems distracted, gazing toward the future, away from the shallow comforts of the present. His longing isn't for champagne or laughter. It's for something immortal, something lasting. And Natasha, her world is smaller, fresher. She doesn't yet feel the weight of history pressing on her shoulders. She wants to dance, to sing, to soak up every possibility before it slips away. Her innocence is almost reckless, but it's the kind that makes you ache, because you know how quickly it can be broken. She taps her fingers on the rhythm of the music, humming along, unaware of how often eyes turn toward her. The night drifts on. People pair off for dances, partners shifting with each change of melody. The warmth of the room thickens, and candles flicker as though even they are dizzy with motion. You catch moments, a smile that lingers too long, a sigh released when no one notices, the tiny hesitation before hands touch in greeting. These are the invisible threads being woven, threads that will pull tighter and tighter until the war outside these walls makes them unbreakable or snaps them entirely. You pause by the refreshment table, watching Pierre again. He spills a bit of wine on his cuff, laughs at himself, and carries on as though mistakes are simply part of his way of being. Andrei doesn't even notice him. He's already lost in thought. Natasha darts past you, laughing at something her brother has whispered, cheeks flushed, her joy carrying you with her. There is a feeling here you recognize from your own life, that moment when everything is about to change, though no one yet knows it. Like the evening before a storm, or the quiet seconds before someone says the words you've been waiting to hear. It's fragile, exciting, a little frightening. And in that fragility, you feel your own heartbeat match theirs. You wonder if you were truly in this room, who you would be drawn to, Pierre with his searching honesty, Andrei with his restless strength, or Natasha with her unguarded laughter. You realize that choosing would be impossible because each of them carries a piece of something you know deeply, the hunger for meaning, the longing for freedom, and the joy of living in a moment that feels endless. The ballroom begins to blur in your memory as though sleep is already tugging you closer, but the impression remains vivid. Glittering salons, restless hearts, a sense that love is both everywhere and just out of reach. You still wonder if it was love or comfort that drew them all into this dance, and whether you've asked yourself the same question in your own life. The music fades, replaced by the memory of footsteps across a frosted courtyard. You find yourself outside now, the night air sharp against your skin, the echo of the ballroom still clinging to your thoughts. The salons feel far away, as though they belong to another life entirely. Here, in the cold quiet, you sense how quickly the glittering ease of gatherings gives way to something heavier. It is the space where private choices take shape. Pierre is here again, his shoulders hunched, his face pulled in conflict. He has inherited wealth beyond his imagination, and yet, standing under the faint glow of lanterns, he looks more lost than ever. He has always laughed at his own clumsiness, shrugged off his awkwardness, but now the weight of responsibility hangs on him like armor too large for his frame. People approach him, not for his ideas, but for his fortune, for the ties his name can bring. You notice how his smile tightens, how his fingers twitch restlessly as if searching for something to hold on to. A duel of the spirit, you think, where he isn't quite sure who he is supposed to be. Andrei, on the other hand, seeks battles of a different kind. He has grown impatient with the whispers of polite society, with the endless repetition of salons and shallow compliments. He speaks of honor, of military duty, of a desire to leave behind something more than polished pleasantries. When he straps on his uniform, you see how it transforms him, how his posture straightens and his eyes sharpen, as if this is the only world where he feels alive. Yet there is sadness too, because behind the uniform waits a wife who feels neglected, and a life that demands tenderness rather than glory. One morning, you stand near a garden gate as Andrei says goodbye to her. The frost clings to the iron bars, and her breath fogs in the air. She reaches for his hand, the gesture soft, but he is already turning his thoughts elsewhere. You recognize that moment from your own life, the way a loved one can be present and yet already far away, pulled by dreams or duties you cannot touch. It leaves a hollow that lingers long after the footsteps have faded. Meanwhile, Natasha is discovering the sweetness of her own awakenings. Her days are filled with music, with walks beneath trees that creak in the winter wind, with sudden bursts of laughter that seem to surprise even her. She sings without needing to be asked, her voice carrying like a ribbon through the house. And when she dances not only with her body, but with her whole spirit, throwing herself into movement as though nothing else exists. Her innocence is still unbroken, but already her heart begins to lean toward something more. She wonders if love is waiting for her just beyond the next turning of the road. One evening, she sits by the fire, the light playing across her face. She taps her finger on the arm of her chair in rhythm to a song only she can hear. You find yourself wondering what she is dreaming about, the curve of someone's smile, the imagined thrill of a proposal, the warmth of a hand that lingers too long in hers. She has not yet faced betrayal, not yet tasted despair, and that unmarked innocence makes her glow all the brighter. Pierre, restless as ever, faces his own duel, not with pistols, though such duels linger on the horizon, but with questions that gnaw at his soul. He reads late into the night, searching for meaning in books that leave him unsatisfied. He talks of destiny, of truth, of brotherhood, but when the candle burns low, he sits alone, staring into the wax as though it might answer him. He longs to belong to something larger, and yet belonging always seems to slip just out of reach. You realize the threads are tightening. Pierre's searching, Andrei's hunger for glory, Natasha's blossoming joy. These are not separate stories, though they seem so now. They are currents of the same wide river, drawing closer with every bend. And as you trace the flow of these lives, you feel the quiet ache of your own questions rising. When was the last time you chased after something that felt just beyond your grasp? When did you last wait by a window, heart pressed against the glass, wondering if someone would return to you? One night, Andrei prepares for departure, his mind set on proving himself in the field. The candles flicker across the dining room table as he listens to the idle talk of friends. His wife, quiet beside him, glances his way, longing for one more moment of tenderness. But his eyes are far, far away. You catch the shadow of a smile when he thinks of glory, but you also notice the emptiness it leaves in the room around him. You still wonder if he knows what he is leaving behind. And somewhere in another corner of the same city, Natasha hums softly, preparing to sleep, unaware of the storm that is gathering. She dreams of dances yet to come, of whispered words not yet spoken, of the rush of first love that waits for her in the near distance. She cannot imagine how close joy and sorrow often walk together. The night folds over you, drawing you deeper into their entangling fates. You can almost hear the unspoken duels, the clash of ideals, the sighs of longing, the dreams of futures not yet written. You sense how fragile it all is, how easily laughter can turn to silence, how swiftly closeness can shift into absence. And in this stillness, you ask yourself the question Pierre, Andrei, and Natasha all carry in their own way. Is life about honor, meaning, or simply love? You know, the answer is never simple. You still wonder if it was love or comfort that guided them, just as you wonder the same about your own heart. The first cannon fire reaches you like a crack across the sky. It isn't close enough yet to shake the ground beneath your feet, but it ripples through the air, a distant reminder that the quiet of salons and gardens is never separate from the roar of history. War, once spoken of in abstract terms, now presses its shadow over every moment. You stand among soldiers gathered in camp, their breath forming pale clouds in the cold. The smell of smoke, leather, and earth wraps around you, heavier than perfume ever could. Pierre, awkward still in his posture, visits the front not as a soldier but as a spectator, a man who wants to understand what honor means in the language of gunpowder. His wide eyes take in the lines of men, the banners flapping in the wind, and he cannot decide if it feels glorious or terrifying. You sense in him the ache of someone who longs to belong but cannot quite find the doorway in. Andrei, in contrast, thrives here. He wears his uniform with ease now, the sharpness of his stance matching the sharpness of his resolve. He leads with precision, each command crisp, his men looking to him as if his certainty alone will shield them. Yet when you watch him quietly at night, sitting apart from the others, you notice the weight in his gaze. Even surrounded by duty, his soul is restless, still searching for the eternal victory he believes might soothe his longing. You wonder if he knows that such victories rarely arrive. Back home, Natasha feels the absence keenly. Letters arrive, words of duty and hope, but they are only paper, thin bridges stretched across vast distances. She reads them aloud to her family, then reads them again in secret, as though repetition might fold Andrei closer to her. Her laughter has softened now, threaded with patience and waiting. She sits at the piano, her fingers hesitating before pressing down, the melody carrying both her joy and her ache into the air. There is a morning when you stand beside her as she opens a letter. The paper trembles slightly in her hands, not from cold, but from the storm of feelings pressing inside her. She reads a line about glory, about service to the country, about the pride of sacrifice. She smiles bravely, but her eyes lower, the unspoken question shimmering there. When will he return, and will he return at all? You know that question too well, the silence of waiting, the small rituals you invent to keep someone close in their absence. In the field, the war unfolds not as glory but as chaos. You drift with Pierre as he watches the smoke swirl across the battlefield. The sound is overwhelming: drums, shouts, the thunder of hooves, the screams that pierce without warning. He sees men fall, not like heroes in stories, but like neighbors, with fear in their eyes. His heart pounds, not from valor, but from shock, and you feel his realization seep into your bones. War is never as it is told in salons. It is mud, blood, and silence. Andrei, however, finds in the chaos a strange calm. He rides forward with courage, the clatter of hooves beneath him, the wind in his hair. In the clash, he feels, for a brief moment, that he has touched the greatness he sought. Yet, even as he commands, even as he surges ahead, there is fragility in the air, because no one, not even he, is immune to the unpredictable turn of fate. Back in Moscow, Natasha tries to fill her days with light. She sings in the evenings, her voice steady at first, then faltering when no one is watching. She walks in the garden, whispering her thoughts into the frost, hoping the trees will carry them to him. Sometimes she laughs with her family, her joy breaking through the grayness like sun through clouds. But then she falls quiet, staring into the fire as though searching for answers in the flames. You recognize that rhythm, those swings between hope and longing, joy and silence. It's the very human rhythm of missing someone too deeply. And still, life continues around them all. Balls are held in Moscow, even as rumors of defeats drift in like unwelcome drafts. Families gather around tables, even as names of the fallen pass from lips in hushed tones. Love persists in letters, in remembered touches, in the stubborn insistence that closeness can exist across distance. One night, you catch Pierre alone again, walking beneath a sky scattered with stars. He speaks to himself, words half-formed, questions unraveling in the cold air. What is life? What is honor? What is love? He wonders. He looks upward as though the constellations might whisper the answer back. You know the feeling, the weight of questions so large you can only send them into the night, hoping the silence itself might bring comfort. Andrei, wounded in battle, lies under the wide sky, the world dimming around him. His strength has carried him far, but now he is only human, fragile, and still. He looks upward, much as Pierre did, and in his pain, he sees not glory, but simplicity. The sky stretches without end, and he feels small within it. In his weakness, a different kind of clarity takes hold. The realization that meaning might not live in victory, but in the tender closeness of life itself. Meanwhile, Natasha sleeps restlessly, turning in her bed as though her heart feels the distance, the danger, the change. In her dreams, she reaches out her hand, waiting for someone to take it. She doesn't yet know what storms lie ahead, but already her innocence begins to tremble. And you, drifting through these tangled lives, carry their ache with you. You still wonder, as Pierre does, if love is enough to give meaning. You still wonder, as Andrei does, if glory can soothe a restless soul. And you still wonder, as Natasha does, if joy can survive waiting. The hush that follows battle feels heavier than the noise itself. You walk through rooms dimly lit by oil lamps, their glow falling on faces marked by absence and worry. In these quiet spaces, the war lingers not in cannon fire, but in the hearts of those left behind. Natasha sits near the window, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes unfocused as she listens to the faint sound of a clock ticking. She is older now, not in years, but in the weight of what she carries. Innocence, so vibrant before, has begun to crack under the pressure of longing. Andrei's absence lies on her like a shadow. She remembers the sharpness of his gaze, the certainty in his voice, and she clings to those memories as though they were solid enough to hold her through the nights. Yet when another figure appears, Prince Anatole, with his easy smile and careless charm, you feel Natasha's heart tremble. He arrives not with honor or promises of eternity, but with reckless immediacy. His glances linger too long, his words drip with daring sweetness, and his laughter tempts her toward a fire she does not understand. One evening, she sits by the piano, her fingers trembling on the keys, and Anatole leans closer than he should. She feels the heat of his presence, the thrill of attention that is both forbidden and irresistible. You recognize the danger of it, the way temptation often arrives dressed in passion, how it promises everything in a single moment without the weight of consequence. Natasha, still young in her heart, believes for an instant that this is love, that this is the answer to her longing. But soon, betrayal unfolds like a curtain torn wide. The truth of Anatole's intentions, his existing marriage, his empty vows, crushes her in an instant. Her joy collapses into despair, her innocence ripped apart by the sting of deceit. She weeps in the stillness of her room, her body curled inward, the world outside muted by her sobs. It is the first time she has known heartbreak, and it breaks not only her, but the rhythm of her family's days. You feel the ache of her loss because you, too, have known the shattering of trust, the silence that follows when someone you once believed in proves false. Pierre is there quietly at the edges of her pain. He has always carried a searching heart, but now he sees Natasha with new clarity. He listens, he comforts, not with grand declarations, but with small, steady presence. The way he pauses before speaking, the softness in his eyes, the patience in his tone, these are not the fiery gestures of a reckless lover, but the quiet devotion of someone who understands that love sometimes means simply staying when another has left. You see it in the way he watches her, a mix of protectiveness, admiration, and something deeper he does not yet dare name. Andrei, far away, learns of Natasha's mistake. The betrayal cuts deep, not only because of her actions, but because it confirms his fear that love, too, can be fragile, fleeting, unreliable. His pride stiffens, his tenderness withdraws. Yet even in this distance, there lingers a thread of longing, a wound that refuses to heal fully. You imagine the way he stares into the fire at night, fists clenched, jaw tight, asking himself if forgiveness is possible, if love can survive disillusion. Natasha, broken, withdraws from the whirl of dances and songs that once defined her. She spends long hours in silence, her eyes red from tears, her laughter vanished. You watch her stare at her reflection in the mirror, almost unable to recognize herself. She whispers questions into the glass. Was it love or only a dream? Was I a fool or just a girl who wanted too much? These questions sting because you've asked them to. The self-doubt that follows heartbreak, the wondering if it was you who misunderstood the rules of love. Time passes slowly in this section of life. Letters are written and not answered, words spoken but not fully received. The war outside continues, shaping lives with its relentless hand, but the more painful war is inside, the struggle to heal, to forgive, to trust again. Natasha moves through days as though underwater, her once bright spirit dimmed. Pierre, quietly present, offers her the only gift he can, his unwavering kindness. He does not push, does not demand, simply remains, a steady figure in the background of her fractured world. It is in these quiet moments you notice something tender. Natasha, sipping tea one morning, taps her mug lightly against the saucer, a habit from long ago, and Pierre smiles at it as though it were the most precious sound. Love is revealed not in the grand gestures of Anatole's reckless passion, but in the tiny, ordinary details that remain when everything else has crumbled. You sit with her as she begins, slowly, to return to herself. She takes short walks again, listens to music without breaking down, allows sunlight to touch her face. Her wounds are still fresh, but the first threads of resilience weave through them. Andrei remains distant, though fate will carry him back toward her in time. Pierre remains near, though silent about the depth of his heart. You still wonder if Natasha will ever forgive herself. You still wonder if Andrei will ever allow forgiveness. And you still wonder if Pierre, gentle and patient, is destined to be seen at last. Not as the clumsy friend in the corner, but as the one who has quietly loved her all along. The seasons shift, and with them, the weight of history presses harder. Moscow burns, not in metaphor, but in flames that lick at rooftops, consuming familiar streets until only ash and smoke remain. Families scatter, carriages rush out of the city, and the once proud capital becomes a hollowed ruin, echoing with the footsteps of strangers. You drift with Pierre as he walks among the chaos, his eyes wide, his heart racing with a mix of terror and wonder. He wanted to understand life's meaning, and here, in the ruins of his own city, he finds not answers but an overwhelming silence. Captured, confined, treated as less than himself, Pierre is forced into stillness. In that stillness, however, something shifts. He watches fellow prisoners, their resilience, their laughter, even in hunger, their ability to share bread, though they have almost none. For the first time, Pierre begins to see love not as an idea, but as an act. Something simple, something human, something far more profound than the philosophies he once chased. In the midst of war's cruelty, he discovers kindness blooming like wildflowers through cracks in stone. Andrei, meanwhile, lies wounded, his body broken, his life slipping through his fingers. Natasha is brought to him at last, her heart pounding, her steps trembling as she enters the room where he waits. The air is thick with the weight of all that was lost and all that might still be salvaged. She takes his hand, fragile in hers, and for the first time since their separation, there are no barriers, no pride, no betrayal, no distance. Only love, raw and undeniable, glowing between them even as death casts its long shadow. He forgives her, not in a flood of words, but in the quiet squeeze of his hand, in the way his gaze softens when he looks at her. Natasha weeps, the tears falling, not just for him, but for herself, for all the choices, the mistakes, the longing. She whispers that she still loves him, that she has always loved him. Andrei, his strength fading, believes her. Their reconciliation is tender, heartbreaking, and final. When he dies, Natasha feels as though the ground itself has been taken from beneath her feet. Time slows after that. The war begins to ebb, the armies withdraw, the smoke clears. Life, in its stubborn way, insists on continuing. Families rebuild, marriages are made, children are born. Natasha, once radiant with girlish laughter, is quieter now. She carries her grief with her, but she also carries resilience. Her love for Andrei remains a tender scar, but alongside it, something new begins to take root. Pierre returns, transformed by all he has endured. The restless, awkward young man who once spilled wine on his sleeve now walks with a calm steadiness. His searching has not ended, but it has deepened. When he looks at Natasha, he no longer sees just her brightness or her mistakes. He sees her whole, as someone fragile, strong, and entirely human. Their closeness grows in small gestures. A walk shared without words. The way Natasha listens when Pierre speaks, her eyes soft though her smile is faint. The way Pierre notices her smallest habits, her tapping fingers, her thoughtful silences, the way she still hums softly when she thinks no one is listening. Love doesn't strike them with thunder now. It settles like a gentle rain, steady and nourishing. Eventually they marry. The world, with all its battles and betrayals, finally yields to peace in their private lives. Natasha devotes herself to family, to children, to the ordinary rhythms that once seemed too small for her restless heart. But you notice how deeply she feels them, how she pours herself into the warmth of her home, how she finds meaning in the everyday. Pierre, ever thoughtful, remains beside her, still searching for truth, but no longer searching alone. Their love is not the fiery blaze of first passion. It is something quieter, steadier, a love built on forgiveness, on survival, on the belief that even after ruin, tenderness can still grow. You sense how rare it is, how precious to find peace after war, not just in the world, but in the heart. And so, as the story closes, you hold their image close. Natasha at a table, rocking a child gently to sleep, Pierre watching with quiet pride, the firelight flickering across their faces. The war is behind them, but love, fragile and enduring, carries them forward. You realize this is what Tolstoy leaves you with, not grand victories, not endless battles, but the simple truth that love, however imperfect, can outlast the noise of history. You still wonder if it was love or comfort that brought them here, but perhaps the difference no longer matters. What remains is the hush of ordinary days, filled with tenderness that no war could destroy. And now, let the echoes of their story fade gently into the background. The drums of war, the footsteps of soldiers, the cries of parting lovers all grow distant, like sounds carried off by the wind until they dissolve into silence. What lingers is only the quiet rhythm of two hearts that found each other at last, not in the blaze of youth, but in the calm of life's later chapters. Imagine yourself in their home, the fire glowing low, the room warm with the scent of wood and the soft weight of blankets. Outside, snow falls in steady silence, blanketing the earth, softening the sharpness of the world. Inside, the only sounds are the steady breathing of those you love, the gentle creak of wood, the whisper of time itself slowing. You might remember Natasha's laughter, bright as bells, now softened into a lullaby for her children. You might recall Pierre's searching eyes, now settled with the peace of someone who no longer wanders alone. Together, they remind you that love doesn't need to be loud to be lasting. It doesn't need to be perfect to be real. It can live quietly in shared glances, in small habits, in the warmth of presence. As you close your eyes, let those images hold you, the calm after storms, the hush after noise, the fragile but unbroken thread of love that carries forward, even when everything else has changed. Feel your breath slowing, your body sinking deeper into rest, your thoughts softening into dreams. Here, in the stillness, there is nothing more to reach for, nothing more to wait for. Only peace, only love, only sleep,